E360 TV proudly presents Messages of Inspirational Stories, broadcasting and live streaming to millions of devices around the world, including Roku, and live streaming to Facebook Live. Also on Amazon Fire TV and to Twitch. Also Android TV and Periscope. Broadcasting to Apple TV and YouTube Live. Proudly brought to you by our host, Donna producer and host, Mikayla Vidal, host and administrator, and Jim Grant, producer and host. Proudly brought to you by the 6minutewebinar.com.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Messages of Inspirational Stories. So Mikayla, it's so awesome to have you back. I can't believe that here we are, November 15th, and the month is halfway over.
I know. And I thought the year has gone by so fast.
Yeah, it's going to go by a little quicker for you.
You would think, right?
Right?
It be faster.
Well, we are super excited to be here today. And today we are talking about motivating yourself and others. And we really felt like this was such an important topic. And we are actually going to break it down because how we talk, first of all, how we talk to ourselves matters most, right? Because what we hear inside of our head is truly how our body responds. But in taking that a step further, today we're going to be talking about all the littles in our life. And Mikayla, you've got a little bit of experience with littles in your life right now.
Surrounded by littles. They're everywhere.
Right. And they multiply with like no seams, and there's more in the corner.
They're like little kittens. When you have kittens, they're just like 7 out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's still my life. We have kittens. Actually, we're buying a thyme Christmas tree, kittens. Right? So I can replant it and use the thyme, because there is no way in God's green earth I can put up a regular Christmas tree with those kittens in my house. They would be all
over that, climbing it and everything.
Oh, they just, go after anything and everything. It looks like fun. It's theirs. So, my children are grown, and I have grandchildren by marriage, and it is so important, Mikayla. Let's dive into that a little bit, and I'd love to hear how you feel about this on the different ages of children and how important it is to start young with really motivating them in everyday things, not just waiting for, the big things like, right, the soccer game or the little league baseball game or whatever, but the little things that they do around the house toward their siblings, etc., or the adults in their life.
Yeah, that's really important. I feel like a lot of people, like you said, when it comes to sports, that's kind of like a given, they're being cheered on and everything like that. But the little things are the things that matter the most. That's what they're going to carry on with them when they're older. And, if you can find ways to get them to enjoy those little, things that they're going to have to do in life, that's really important, because as adults, I try to think of it like when my kids don't want to do something, I try to remind myself, we're not always motivated to do anything. I don't like cleaning, but I know as an adult, at the end of the day, when I'm going to sleep in a clean house, I know how it makes me feel compared to, how crazy I feel, stressed out in my head and everything when it's, crazy around the house. So I think it's important to explain that to kids, in their own little way. No kid loves chores. My kids hate chores. They will try to come up with any excuse not to do chores.
Oh, absolutely.
The excuse of, I'm not good at it. And it's like, I don't expect you to be. But, simple things as making your bed, my kids don't even like to take a shower. Like, I'm just like, we do that for a reason,
Right.
but it's really important to motivate them, because we have to motivate ourselves. But for us as adults, it's easier to, like we don't always like going to work, but we know if we don't go to work, you're not going to have, water's going to be turned off, electricity's going to be turned off,
Right.
kids aren't going to eat, you're not going to eat, So as adults, we kind of understand. Kids don't really understand. To them, it's more, mom's making me do this, like, we're like the worst parents in the world, basically,
You're right.
So to explain it to them and to motivate them, for me, it's the reason why they do it and explaining that reason why to them and help them understand that, when we do these things, this is how we feel when we do them compared to when we aren't doing them and all that good stuff. So that's how I like to see it as a parent. And some days it is hard. Some days I'm just like, just do it or else you're going to be in trouble, but like we're not all perfect, but most of my days look like that. It's just like,
Right.
But it is important to motivate them starting from a really, really young age. Honestly, kids are so smart, even when they're like not even able to talk. Like my youngest she just turned 1. If she understands what I'm saying, if I tell her not to touch something, she's going to look at me. She may look at me while trying to touch it again, but
Right.
they understand. So I think it's, really important to start that from a young age because that will carry them on for life.
Absolutely.
And it's easier to motivate them when it's already like habit and they already know the reason why, so that when they are older, they can think to themselves, well, why do I have to do this? Instead of just be rebellious. I guess they're all going to be rebellious, but
right.
It could be controlled a little bit, or, they can be easier to understand things besides just, well, I'm just going to do it, if that makes sense. So it all starts when they're little.
I remember when my children were little, they had to rotate chores every month. Every month was a rotation. And, I was a single mom. So doing an allowance was really not in the equation for me.
Right.
It just wasn't there. But what I did do as my children got older, I sat them down and they're like, well, Mom, preteen, early teen, they're like, well, my friend gets an allowance and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, right.
And I sat them down and I said, look, guys, here's the cold, hard facts. The fact is, I don't have the extra money to give you an allowance. And the other fact, and more important than that, is we all live here. And so we all contribute to the mess in the house. Right. And at the same, on the flip side, we contribute to the cleanness on the house.
I like
so that. It's not fair for just one person to do everything.
Right.
Is it? And they're like, no, it's not. And I said, so here's the deal. I can't give you an allowance weekly, but what I will do is give me heads up when you want to go out with your friends, go to a movie, you want to go out and get a bite to eat, you want to go shopping, and I'll make sure that there's money there for you.
Right.
And so that worked well for me. It's different, of course, for everybody, but that's what worked well for me. And I know now that my children are, all in their almost mid-20s on up to almost 30. I know, right? My oldest will be 29. That they appreciate now the fact that I taught them how to clean and clean properly, right? Because there's, it's okay. Life is crazy. Life is busy. And at least in my world, there is never going to be such a thing as a perfect surface.
Right.
Right. It's just, especially when you've got really young ones, but you come home, you've got mail, you look through the important bills and you get to it later and it's there on the counter. To me, that's a non-issue. What is an issue for me and always has been is having a clean house. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that once you clean that floor, that sucker's not going to get dirty in about 5 minutes. Right.
Do not walk on this floor.
Right. Give me 5 minutes of cleanness and I'll be happy. But, I also started with my children. I figured that when they were old enough, and I'm talking little, to pull toys, I didn't use a toy bin or a toy chest because I didn't want the lid to come down on their little fingers or their arms. So I got those huge, I don't even know if they sell them anymore, but they were huge buckets. They were plastic buckets and they had the rope handles on the sides. And I used those, and that's what their toys went in. And so my thought was if they were old enough to crawl over there and pull the stuff out, they're old enough to put it back.
Put it back in.
Yep. And so, they didn't like it. I remember that little look. And I'm like, no. So I would go over and literally grab the ball or whatever it was with their hands. And we would go over to the little toy tub and put it in there until they got the idea that this is what has to be done. Right. But, in motivating your children, hindsight is 2020, as they say. And I wish I had done more of that. And I did a lot, but as I look back in my life and my journey through this beautiful, beautiful world that we live in, I think back and I think, gosh darn it, Donna, I could have done more. So, at almost 57, this is, my advice for any of the young parents out there. You cannot motivate and praise your children enough.
And praising them is, it is a way to motivate them.
Right.
And I like how you brought up the whole allowance thing because that's been brought up in our house. But our whole issue is, we're a blended family on like two different ends of the spectrum. So, I have my own and then my husband has his own. And, we've heard the whole, well, I get allowance if I do chores. And it's like, that's great. That means you're going to be more rich than your siblings who don't.
Right.
Like I don't have the money like you. I don't have, we got a whole bunch of them. I don't have just one kid. Right. I'm going to be broke.
Right.
I don't have all the money in the world to just reward them for doing, the chores. And, I explained to them like, if their reward is, well, you want a phone, you want to spend time on your phone and talk to your friends, like you earn that, so by doing the basics, that's how you earn that. And so like, of course, as they, when they're younger, the rewards are different, but I don't really like to, I guess, reward them. Kids is kind of different when they're littler. It's kind of different because kids are just, I like to say my kids are mean. I think little kids are so mean. They're so bossy. They know how to get their way. They'll do it, especially if there's a reward, but I try not to reward them too much. I don't want it to get to the point to where they're not going to do it unless there's a reward, if that makes sense.
Correct. And I think that rewarding, especially when they're young, rewarding with praise is the best reward you can give. Yep.
And and that's true. Because if you pay attention to your kids, they'll be happy with, whatever TV time, whatever it is. But like, because even as an adult, if someone tells you like good job or whatever, like you're going to be more excited because that's going to fill your own cup, like watching TV is not going to do anything. That's just a temporary little thing. But if they think, well, when I do this, mom or dad is, proud of me, like I'm doing something good, that makes them happy. And that's every kid wants to make their parents happy, even when they're smaller. And they know that if they're making you happy, like they know what that means to make you happy, because when they upset you, they don't like it.
Right.
So I think, praising is a really good way to reward them. I think using the little rewards every now and then is good, just not to overdo it.
Exactly.
So it's not becoming I'm not going to do this because I don't have a reward for it, basically.
Right. Well, and, and my thought is that one of the beautiful ways I think to reward children, not like 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds, but as they're older and they can read, and is identifying what each one of them likes. So if you have an older child that loves to read, then you can create a special little area that they can go and not be bothered by anybody, whether it's in your
Right.
bedroom, laying on your bed, mom and dad's room, right? That they can lay in there and have an hour to read or someplace to go color, and that they get that special reward of those things that they like, because you were then instilling in them what they already love, right? You're
Right.
helping that grow and blossom, and you can. It's not per se monetary reward, right?
Right.
It's something that they love to do to begin with, but they just get some extra special time in which to do it.
Right. You're going around it and they don't even realize it. But yeah, finding their passions is a really good way to motivate them, because there's different ways you can motivate, your kids. You can motivate them, when they're little and it comes to learning. Like my kids don't like to learn. When it comes to sitting down, they cannot sit. They're not learning, like school, they learn and they have workbooks and all that. They can't do that. My kids cannot do that. But like one of my kids, she loves like horses. So, if we're practicing counting, like we'll take little horses and we'll count them. Like finding what they like and what they enjoy is a lot of help when it comes to motivating them, because there's, like I said, be motivating them to, like when they get older, to stay true to themselves and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and Mikayla, you have 3 kids?
Six and a third.
6 and a third. There we go.
However that would work.
And, I think we've talked about this on the show before, and we brought it up early in the beginning right here. But it's so important to understand your energy, right? So as a parent, when we motivate our children by words, by praising them, it's a beautiful circle, because what we're doing is we're actually motivating ourselves by motivating our children, right?
Yeah.
You're filling your own cup by filling your child's cup.
That's true.
And there's so many things out there that are awesome. We have a couple quotes that we wanted to read that I just thought were just awesome. This one is, I love this. Of course, this would be for an older child, but don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can do, right? Because I know at 7, 8 years of age, oh boy, that can be a tricky age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be, I can't do this, Mom. I can't do this, even at 6 years old. And explaining that, it's just, maybe you just got to learn or be a little more patient with yourself. We've talked about, and this is one of my personal things, I talk a lot about giving yourself grace, right? Give yourself grace, give your child grace. Learn to have your child understand that giving themselves grace in maybe not understanding something right away is not a bad thing. It's just everybody learns different, right?
Right.
And we get so impatient in this world about, oh my gosh, got to learn now, got to do this, got to do that, right? We are so hyper fast that we forget the simple things. And Mikayla, I mean, I am sure without a shadow of a doubt that you can say that the learning, watching 6 children in your household is completely different from age to age to age. One age got it earlier, than the other. I know I'll give a quick example. My oldest, I swear to everything holy to me, that child had all of his teeth and was walking and talking in full sentences at 11 months of age.
Oh my goodness.
I have never seen somebody pull so many teeth in at one time. I'd look one day and there'd be 2 teeth, and I'd look 2 days later and there'd be 6 teeth coming in. I'm like, holy cow. And he just was super, super, super quick. And my middle one, her teeth took forever to come in. In fact, I had her baby teeth, the last of her baby teeth pulled at 16. They had re-cemented themselves in her mouth.
What?
Swear to God.
Wow.
It was crazy. So just that we learn in different ways, our bodies do different things. And I think that's so important to slow down and understand with our littles.
Oh yeah. And then to not compare them, which is really hard as a parent, because it's like, especially when it comes to them being, little, and it comes to milestones and all that, because every kid is going to learn differently. Like my first, she was, well, she wasn't my biggest baby, but she was talking, kind of like yours. I don't know about the teeth. I don't remember. But she was ahead on her speech. She was really smart. But at the same time, I think she was my only child. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But I kind of think genes has a thing to do with it too. When it comes to learning, it's environment, and I think genes has a part to play with it. Her dad's really smart. Like GT smart. I'm not, so I think that's where she gets it. But she was ahead on a lot of her stuff, and then my other ones were just taking their time. My 1-year-old, she turned 1 in July. She's still not walking. She has no interest in walking. She'd rather be carried. Right. But some babies, everyone likes to say don't call your baby lazy, but my baby's lazy. She's lazy if she knows she can be held. Why am I going to walk if mom's just going to pick me up anyways? Right. I would be the same. I'm lazy too. She probably gets that from me. They all grow differently. And, don't compare them, and don't blame yourself either. Because I know there's times where I'm like, well, maybe if I could give more attention to this one, they would know more, I guess, at this age that, like her siblings. But it is important to remember, not to compare them, and not to compare them to, like other kids their age with other parents. Because there are going to be some kids that do excel more. But then if you realize that, kids who do excel, they start to slow down a little bit. Right. Everyone just has their different growth rates, and it continues on into adulthood. We all excel in different areas. So it's really important to not blame yourself, not, think anything's wrong with your kid, obviously. Right. And yeah, for sure, give them grace. Every kid learns differently, especially when it comes to learning. That's super, super important, because some kids are hands-on, some kids are visual, some kids they need all of the ways to learn. You have to tell them 50 times before they learn. But eventually, they catch on. And it can get really frustrating, because as a parent, I know there's certain of my children where I'm like, why do I have to tell you like 500 times? Especially if they're older, it's like I'm just talking to a wall sometimes. But it is because, as adults, especially when you work with like other adults, there's some, they don't always listen either. So, as adults, we're not perfect, and I can't stress enough, about the whole give them grace, because I listened to a video the other day, and it was so true. And I never really thought about it, because I get onto my kids. Like if they're not listening to me, I'll raise my voice at them, I'll admit it. But I listened to a video the other day, and it was talking about, how as adults, if we're not doing something perfectly, we don't have anyone, yelling at us to do it right or anything like that. So why do we do it to our kids? And it had me really thinking. I'm like, wow. Well, when you put it that way, now I feel bad.
Right. And you brought up a really great point. And if I could interject for just a second.
Yeah.
When children aren't listening to us, and again, hindsight is so 2020. I think when they're older, the best way to do that is to sit down and explain to them, you're not listening to mommy right now, and that's really disrespectful.
Right.
And then say, how would you like it if you wanted my attention, needed me to do something for you, and I totally ignored you?
Right. And that works more.
Right. And because you're getting them to understand where they're at and how it's coming in to perceiving into you.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important, and it works. It's more effective than, raising your voice, because when it comes to, kids reach a point where I don't want to say they just think about themselves, but they're not really to the point to where they understand, like they understand other people's feelings, but they don't truly understand unless, so if I'm not, okay, so obviously if I'm raising my voice, they know I'm angry, but they're not truly understanding, it's not, I'm mad at you. It's more like frustration and like upset, that you're not listening. So if you just take the time to explain to them, like how, like you said, how would that make you feel, if I did this? Because we all know our kids, if you don't hear them the first time, they're going to repeat themselves, and
Right.
then they're going to be upset if you don't respond to them. So, they know what it feels like. So that is a really good thing. And it is more effective than, raising your voice, because I've done
Mhm.
both, and sitting down is always more effective than raising your voice at them.
Right.
Always.
Right. We just as humans tend to tune out the negative, right?
Mhm.
And that's what, raising our voice does. And of course there are times you have to raise your voice,
Right.
if they're in imminent danger, that kind of
Right.
thing. If they're, a sibling fight.
Right.
Yeah, I think you kind of got to raise your
Something
voice
that
right
has
then.
to stop right away. Yeah.
Um, but the communication, and I look back, and I always talk to my children as adults.
Mhm.
And so my last name is Guinois. So my children had, and my two oldest have hyphenated names. My name, my ex-husband's. So, they learn to spell a difficult word at a very young age. But I think for me, in not um, talking down to them at a child level, but bringing them up was huge, because they had the ability throughout school at a young age to understand larger words
Right.
and their context of meaning.
Mhm.
And I remember teachers saying, how do you even know what that means? And they're like, well, because my mom talks to us.
Duh.
Like, duh, doesn't everyone's mom talk to them? But I was raised that way as well. And
Mhm.
so, my dad was a psychologist, and dumbing down was not something that was done.
Right.
And I hate to use that word and that phrase, dumbing down, but I do believe that if we lift our children up into a higher frequency of verbal learning, that
Mhm.
their frequency comes up.
Right. And then they pick that up, and then they're able to do that to other kids too, because
Correct.
which is important, because not a lot of parents are like that. So when you have a friend that's like that, it's helpful. And when they are having days when they can't figure something out, it's easier for them to pick themselves back up, because they constantly hear it all the time. So it helps them help themselves too, and then other people.
Right. Right. I love it. That kind of goes into this and saying, I think I can. I know I can. Everything that you do or don't do comes down to confidence, and
Mhm.
always believe in yourself, even when it's not easy. And that ties so much into the younger littles when they
Oh,
can't
yeah.
get something right, and say, you know what, you can do it. You just
Mhm.
didn't get it this first time or the second time. I remember my children having a difficult time um, writing out a paper, and because I was pretty powerfully in tune to them learning to write the proper way, I would make them rewrite it for homework 6 times until they got it right. And you know what, though, that they then understood, okay, this is the punctuation difference. And then I'd go over it with them. I wouldn't just say rewrite it and not go over it with
Right.
them. You
Right.
have to know that you can do this.
Mhm.
and I would explain where they were at. And so when they got done, although they were exasperated up until that last paper, right? But then you could
They
see them
still
be
got
so
it.
right. They were so proud that they
Mhm.
understood and that they got there. And they're like, oh, I see it now, Mom. And I would hold up, say that first one that they did, and then the last one, and say, do you see the difference? And they're like, oh,
Right.
Mommy, that makes sense. I get it now. And so that's them understanding, I think I can. I know I can.
Right. And that's important to instill into them because, they can say it, but, if they have somebody else, backing them up and telling them that they can do it, because, they reach a point where they're like, no, I can't do it, Mommy.
Right.
And when you keep reiterating, like, yes, you can, and I've also read something where, don't explain it to a kid where you have to, like, if they can't figure something out, like tying their shoes, that's something that eventually they're going to have to learn how to do. But
Mm-hmm.
instead of being like, well, you're going to have to figure it out because you have to know how to tie your shoes,
Right.
Try to explain it to them that it's like a challenge that they have to conquer, but that, they can do it. There is different ways to tie your shoes. You can tie your shoes with them to show them, that, mommy or daddy or whoever can do it too. And
Mm-hmm.
it's always good to explain to your kids. Because, we always explain to our kids, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not do everything right the first time. It takes practice. And we always tell them, like riding their bike, something they
Right.
never thought that they could do, but they
Right.
can do it now, and they're probably faster than we are. It's as long as you tell them like they can do it. And it's funny because my youngest, well, not my youngest is 1, but my 3-year-old, she'll try to do something and she'll be like, I can't do it. And as she's like doing it, and she'll be like, I can't do it, Mommy. And I'm like, you're doing it. And so like the recent thing that she wasn't able to do is when she was riding her bike, when she's going like up the sidewalk, she starts to go back down because she stops pedaling.
Right.
And I'm like, we're all like, you can do it. Keep pedaling, keep pedaling. And poor thing gets so distracted with everything else around her. So she's just, stopping. And we're like,
She squirrels.
you got dog, and she did it. And she was like, Mommy, I did it. And I'm like, see? So, and once they have that confidence and they see for themselves that they can do it, even if they don't do it after they were able to do it, they don't think to themselves, I can't do this. They know they can do it. And if they try hard enough, it takes practice. Practice makes perfect. Like my kids don't like chores. My daughter swears she hates sweeping because she sucks at it, right? And it's like, I'm like, baby girl, I'm not good at sweeping either. It's okay. Like if there's a crumb on the floor, it's fine. Like we have dogs, they're going to pick it up. Like don't
That's
beat
a secondary
yourself up,
and third-dairy vacuum cleaner.
Right. Just let the dog, pick up after you. He's got your back. Like don't beat up yourself. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. She likes everything to be perfect, but I'm like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay.
Right.
And we'll bring up her riding her bike. Like it's like practice to learn. And now you're like a superstar at it. It's okay if you don't do everything right the first way. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Even if
right.
you insist it has to be.
Right. And I think that's important, Mikayla, because we tend to want so much perfection that if we put that on our children at a young age, it can, in my opinion, it can be a detriment as they grow and learn harder things, because then they're not getting it right the first time and they automatically in their head say, I'm failing.
Yeah. And it's really unmotivating to them.
Correct. It's counterproductive.
Right.
It is completely counterproductive. So understanding that, there is no perfection, we live our entire life trying to be better at something, trying to do more at something. But, it's just okay, the fact that they're trying.
Right. And that's all you can ask. That's all you can ask. And I won't even lie, like my kids are awful with their chores. And when they go to sleep, I fix it, but they don't need to know.
Right.
So it's something fun for them. Like my 3 and 4 year old help do the chores. I mean, wiping the table. But see, they're little. They love to sweep. Like my
Right.
3 year old will just walk around the house with the broom. You have to say clear because she will like slap you in the face with the broomstick without even realizing it. But like
Right.
she loves to sweep, and if you don't let her sweep, she will yell at you. Like they love
And
to help.
right. And so, there's a perfect example right there. Your 3-year-old loves to sweep. So you can go to probably the dollar store or Walmart and
Hmm.
get one of those shorter brooms that's
Right.
easier for her to handle. And she
Which
can
is
just
so
sweep away.
funny. It's so funny that you bring that up because they so we got this little catalog for, Christmas in the mail, this toy catalog, right?
Mhm.
And there's this little broom set for kids, and it comes with a little mop and a little broom, and that's what they asked for.
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
love it.
it's like out of all these toys, you want that? It's just like, ah. It's like,
Oh, that is
okay.
priceless. That is priceless.
It's so funny,
That
but
is awesome, though.
it is. And, they have days where they like don't even want to help. But the fact that they like even enjoy it for one day is completely fine with me because
Mhm.
at least, you know, your kids watch you. And if, they're watching their siblings too, but you have to lead
Oh,
by
yeah.
example. If you're not doing your own chores, like I can't expect, so I ideally like my kids to make up their bed, but I can't expect them to do that every day because I don't even do that every day,
Right.
and it's a really bad habit. But, there's things where I'm like, because part of me in my head's like, well, I don't want them, I want them to be better than me, but it's like, I can't expect them to do something if I'm not leading by example.
Mhm.
So that
Mhm.
is another important thing. Like, if I'm not willing to make the same practices and put in the effort, I can't expect them to. I can't get.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So definitely leading by example is another way that you can motivate your kids, especially when they're smaller, because that's how they learn a lot of ways, is
Mhm.
by showing them. And really, it's not even having to be like, okay, sit down and watch mommy make the bed. Like they'll jump in. Like if I actually do make my bed, like they're helping me. They know
Right.
how to make the bed, So a lot of the times you don't even have to directly teach them. Like this is what we do. Like they just know how to do it by looking at you. The
By
same way,
osmosis.
yeah, the same way that when they sit and they watch a show, like they probably end up knowing the show word for word. Like they pay
Mhm.
attention. So
Right.
that's like the biggest way that you can teach your kids without even realizing it.
And I think a really great way when you have, because like in your house, you have from one to how old's your oldest?
She just turned 13.
Okay. So you're at a difficult time right there, sis.
Oh yeah, I'm learning.
Oh, hang on, your hat's going to get worse. We'll talk after the show. Uh, one of the great ways if everyone is just kind of having one of those frumpy weeks and nobody's really jiving and getting stuff done that just truly has to be done. One
Mhm.
of the things I would always try and do when my kids were little is say, okay, if everybody helps and pitches in for an entire week, let's get together and everyone let's decide what we're going to have, and you guys can all help me make part of it, and let's have a big picnic. If it's cold outside, just do a picnic down in the family room or the living room,
Right.
and have a big picnic and just have some fun. And it's amazing what kind of motivation little things like that does. And yet you're still
Mhm.
teaching them, right? You're still
Right.
teaching them, okay, now you said it all work, mommy and daddy, right? So you're teaching them as a family unit, we have to work
Mhm.
together. And then we're all going to take part in making a big picnic. So
Right.
everybody gets to help with something according to, their age and how much that they can do. And
Right.
then you get to all partake in the picnic and have fun. I used to make forts for my kids. I showed them how to make, you know, forts with all the chairs and the
My kids
sheets and stuff.
love to make
Oh,
forts.
it's the best. It is truly the best right there. So we would have picnics in the fort, and it was absolutely hysterical fun, just hysterical fun.
And they enjoy the little things. Like people think that, kids need all the, the money or the newest things that, they have to go, the only reward they'll accept is a new toy.
Right.
They love the small things, and they love family time, because, between work and having other kids, having, that family time isn't always there. So, when you offer it as, if we all work together and help out, we can
Mhm.
all, do this together, they love that.
Right. One thing I always used to do when my children were little, and of course I didn't have as many as you do, but I had three children, and my ex-husband was always on the road. And
Mhm.
so what I would do is I would swap weekends, and then my kids would get a date night with mommy. And that means after everyone goes to bed, they get to come in and sleep with mommy, and we would have, some snackies, and right, and we'd watch movies. We'd get to pick whatever their little Disney movie was that was their
Right.
favorite. We'd put that in, and we'd watch. And honestly, they had so much fun. They didn't stay up very late. They thought they did, but
As long
right.
as it was, longer than everybody else, that's all that
Right?
matters.
It didn't matter.
Right.
I got to have that mommy. I had a mommy date. And, that was amazing for my children to have that
Hmm.
sleepover with mommy in mom drinks, right? And watch movies. I mean, that was like the highlight right there. That was the
Yeah,
highlight.
I can only imagine. My kids, yeah, they would love that. I hate when they come to my room and make messes all over my bed. But
But
in
you
the
know what?
perfect world, they would love that.
But and the other thing that the other piece of advice is that when you're in the thick of it, like you are right now, from 1 to 13 with another one on the way,
Mhm.
um, I just want to say this honestly: savor the moments,
Oh,
and don't sweat the small stuff, because I'm going to tell you, in a blink of an eye, Mikayla, they're going to be gone.
I
Even
know.
though you're at seven, almost seven children, they're going to be gone in the blink of an eye, and
I
you're going to be
know.
like, right? I go around the house and I tell my husband, oh my gosh, I don't know what made me remember this, but I remember this from when my children were, and
Aw.
and all those memories. And I'm pretty much a mama bear, right? I'm very maternal and warm and fuzzy that way. Which makes up. But thinking about some of those precious, incredible moments of yesteryear are huge. So don't worry about, if they make a mess in your room, because there's going to be that day that you're going to want them to make that
To
mess in
make
the
a
room,
mess.
and they're
Yeah.
not there. I'm serious. That is huge. Take those moments and savor them, because girl, look at it. Your oldest is 13.
I
We're
know.
talking just a few years and she's out of the house.
I know. And I met, because our oldest is 13. That's my husband's, his oldest. And so I remember dropping her off, her elementary, and she was in like first grade. And I remember this was before like my daughter even started kindergarten. And I remember like tearing up, and I'm like, why is it? And I remember telling her dad, I was like, why are you not like crying when she's walking into school? It like wasn't even her first day or anything. But I've never experienced like a kid like walking into school, and I'm like, is this what it feels like to just like let your
Hmm.
kid go into school and just trust all these other people to watch them,
Right?
And then now that when I watch them, it amazes me like you were like just that small, and now you're so smart, and now you're almost taller than me, and my youngest kid's just like, when did you even grow?
Right?
And they just look at me like, well, mommy, I had a birthday. It's like, yeah,
Right?
I know. That's the problem. You keep growing. Because
Exactly.
I honestly feel like when I have a birthday, I don't even think about it. To me, I feel like I look the same. I may not feel the same because I definitely can feel the older age coming on. But I
You're
mean,
still a baby.
I know. Some days I feel like I'm so old, but I'm not even 30 yet. But it's just like I feel like I'm the same to me, but then it's like I look at them and I'm like, when I see you every day, like when did you even grow? because every day you look the same to me. But then when I look at you like a year from now, you look like a little baby.
Yep.
So
I
they do
remember
grow fast.
I remember one summer, my son, you know, school was out and it was getting on time to get ready for school and get supplies. And he had a pair of jeans on and stood up. And I swear to you, they were over the summer. They were that much too
They grow
short.
fast, especially
Oh
with their growth spurts.
my God. I was like, are you kidding me? What? They're like, yeah, all
When
my
did that
jeans are that
happen?
short, Mom. And I'm like, you've been wearing shorts all summer, so I didn't know.
Right,
So it was
that's true.
immediately go out and get new school clothes because they grew so much. But that was that's stuck in my head because it was that mark that in junior high, how quick they were starting to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my youngest, she's a petite thing. And I mean, honestly, I don't think she's grown height wise. It's probably seventh grade.
Really?
Yeah, she'll be 24, but she's just real little. She's 5 foot, and that's it. And she's
Just
not.
5 feet.
Yeah, she's 5 foot, but she's
Oh,
real petite, and
yeah.
and I always tease her about, well, you still haven't grown since like you were 12. She's like, I know, Mom, I know, but I mean, it was amazing. Like I look at it, and all my children were out here for our celebration of marriage
Mm-hmm.
last month, and my middle Gaia is 5'9", and my
Wow.
oldest is as tall as I am, and then there's Tiana who hits me about here, right?
Oh my goodness.
And so, it's just amazing though in watching these beautiful, wonderful souls, and I want to say creatures, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but
These
these
animals.
right, these beautiful people that I
Mm-hmm.
brought into this world and molded, and they all have their own lives and they're all doing their own things. And so that's what I mean, it comes in a blink and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in a blink. So, um, give those praises and motivation in beautiful ways,
Right.
that will help your children grow, because that is the foundation to having their energy balanced from their head to their heart, and not being
Right.
out of balance is understanding that whatever I do, I can get there. I may not do it the first time, I may not do it the second time, but I'm going to get it. And then
Right.
they have that faith in themselves, because faith is something that we can't see, right?
Right.
We can't see it, and we can't tangibly feel it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's that belief inside, and it's that belief in us. And I believe that when we pass that on to our children, especially the littles at a young age, maybe it's just everybody gets together and they help make cookies at the end of the week or on the weekend, little things that motivate our children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if they're 1 years old up to 13 years old, they're all going to be incredibly proud that they got to be a part of it. And like with your
Right.
13-year-old, she's going to be your helper, right? She's going to help the
Right.
younger ones, show them the ropes and how to do things.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Like the other day, we all painted outside. We got these little things from the dollar store, and it doesn't even have to be something super expensive. We got these little wood, I don't even, they have like little wood pictures that you can paint, and they all picked something out and they all painted something. Of course the little ones are going to be mixing 5,000 colors,
Right.
but they were so proud of it. Like, look, Mommy, look what I made. And because hers was like a little box, and she shows me every day what she's put in there, even though it's the same thing every day.
Right.
She's so proud of her little box, and of course, all the kids love to paint. They're all creative. So it's something that they all enjoy, whether it looks perfectly, like, of course, the older ones are going to make sure every little inch is covered and, looks perfect, and you got the little ones who are just throwing paint everywhere, but they enjoy it, and we did it outside, so there's not really cleanup. So
Right. right.
it's fun for everyone.
Well, and with the fall, it might be too late. We don't really have in the valley here in Phoenix, we don't really have that season where the leaves
But it's
turn too much. But, I remember in Ohio, we would go out and collect leaves
mm,
and, we'd put leaves on pieces of paper just because they were pretty and they were different
right.
colors, right? And of course, they would dry up and they didn't last, but it didn't matter. It was at that moment, it was creating that beautiful memory of what
Right.
fall looks like to them. And
Hmm.
so, in Ohio, we had, a surplus of leaves and different things that we could incorporate when they were pretty young. But what a beautiful thing. So there's so many creative things you can do. And those are the things that help bring that balance and that harmony to our
Right.
little ones, just like your painting did. I mean,
Mhm.
it doesn't, like you said, there's no such thing as it has to be perfect. They don't have
Right.
to they don't have to paint in the lines,
Right.
right? Because that doesn't even matter. That's
Hmm.
their creative process, and that's what we want to push through is the creative process of being, and I like to call it being perfectly imperfect,
Right.
right? Being
Hmm.
perfectly imperfect because we all are. We are perfectly imperfect, and we're all where
Hmm.
we're supposed to be for the time where we're at that season in our life.
Right. And perfectly imperfect. The first time I heard that was a few years ago, and I was like, how come I never thought about that? It said something so like two little words. I'm like, that is so, and it hits
Profound.
you. It hits you like those two little words,
Hmm.
because nobody's perfect, and you're perfectly imperfect,
Right.
like, and don't even strive to be perfect because I explain to my kids all the time, like it's nothing to strive for, because they look up to mommy and daddy, and it's like I'm not even perfect, and I
Right.
definitely don't try to be either. So, you know,
Right. And that's something that's important um, to be able to tell your children because we aren't perfect is that
hmm
when we've done something that hurts their feelings or wasn't right, that we actually own up to it and say,
yep,
I'm sorry, mommy wasn't thinking,
yep. And
right?
then that teaches them to do the same thing as well.
Exactly. Again, what you said earlier, lead by example.
hmm It teaches the communication, and communication in
Ah,
itself brings them really far because there's so many adults that can't even communicate. So to be able to
correct.
teach that to your kids is really important too.
It is. It is. And I
Mhm.
love that you brought that up because, especially with, I know it was difficult with my three children, and I can't even imagine your full household. But communication, and I know my husband is the youngest of seven, so we've talked a lot about that, and how communication was everything. And his dad had a major chore chart, and he was military, which before I forget, we want to thank all the veterans, past, present, and
Mhm.
future, today, being veteran or last week. We want to thank all the veterans for their service. Since we didn't get to do that last week, we want to make sure we put that in there this week. But anyway, that having that balance in our life with our children and teaching them, the other thing is helping each other,
Working
helping
together
each
as a
other.
team. Yeah.
Hmm. Yep. And maybe set a timeline. You've got a little. This is how much time it should take you to get this done.
hmm I like that. I know in our house, because kids are really competitive too. And they're bossy. My kids are bossy. So if when it does come to their chores, they'll be like, "You missed a spot.
Right.
You missed a spot right there," and it's like, okay, it's good. We tell them, like help each other out. Be each other's, like not critique each other, but if someone, isn't doing anything, like, if there's like a big old crumb on the floor or something, just be like, hey, you missed a spot. Like, don't be bossy. You're not their boss. You're not their parent. Help them out. And if they still don't see it, like, go and help them. Don't
Right.
just, you know, you're not their manager. You're not gonna, no, you still got it, because they're not going to listen to you at that point.
Right.
You're not your mom, so, we stress, helping each other out in the sense of, communicating first. And if they still don't understand, actually helping them out, so working together. It's important to, teach them to do it themselves so that they do learn, but then also working together as, if someone's struggling and you can do it, help them out in that sense, show them how they can do better, or show them, a different way to do it, because there's more than one way to do things.
Right. Exactly.
So that's, working together is super important, because you're going to have to work together with other people no matter where you are.
The rest of your life.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't like working together.
Right.
So, and some of my kids, my 3-year-old she does not like to get help. She is determined to do it herself. If you try to help her, she's like, no, and with her, she's 3. It's kind of hard to explain to her, you kind of need help, but let them know that it's okay to get help, that you can't do everything, some things you need help on, and that's okay. I know you want to try to do it yourself, but you can help them without doing it for them, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because kids want to learn, that they're doing it themselves. Exactly. Or not learn, but think that they're doing it themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we're going to talk a little more in tomorrow's show about helping and having chore partners as our different ages in our children, and different ways to express with the middle-aged children, how to lift each other up, right? And how to help each other grow and give each other grace. Okay, I have way too much glare on the screen with my glasses. But we will be back tomorrow. We are out of time, Mikayla. We want to thank each and every one of you who have taken the time to be with us today, whatever platform it is you're watching us from. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we wish for you, whether it's morning or night, that your day, your night is filled with much love and joy and family health. And we will see you tomorrow. Thanks, folks.